Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Progressive Bitcoiner. I'm your host, Trey Walsh, and today we have on the show Lyudmyla from the Open Dialogue Foundation, and they're a nonprofit in Europe that focuses on democracy, rule of law, and human rights. And this was very, very important for the discussion that we had today, talking about privacy, protecting Bitcoin's self-custody, and proof of work in Europe that has ramifications for the world as well. So we talked about her work in human rights, kind of her history and background and the reason that she's so interested in human rights. Talked about banking and how bank accounts can be shut down for activists and all these other really important and crucial things. And we also talked about what folks can do in Europe, in the United States. This is a very, very important year to discuss with lawmakers, regulators, the importance of protecting self-custody of Bitcoin, proof of work of Bitcoin. And it's way beyond just Bitcoin. It's about the type of world and society we want to live in. Do we want to protect privacy? Do we want to protect people's ability to raise and fundraise across borders and things like that Bitcoin promotes as a tool for these types of things? So this is really, really, really important work. And it also can feel a bit overwhelming at times in terms of what to do. Lyudmyla has great suggestions and advice for that. So really, really hope you all enjoyed this episode and dig into it and share it with others as well who are really concerned about human rights around the world. Like I said, it's beyond Bitcoin. This is a human rights conversation, and Bitcoin is a tool unlocking just huge, huge potential for human rights. So thank you so much, Lyudmyla, for coming on the show. And all of the links for the Open Dialogue Foundation and ways to get in touch with her are going to be in the show notes, as well as a Geyser Fund to support and promote their work. They need funding, everyone. They need funding to meet with legislators to cover expenses to support their nonprofit. So please, if you care about these things in this episode that we discussed, please consider donating and supporting them. And as always, if you have any thoughts or feedback on this show or want to know ways to get in touch with her or different thoughts, you can also follow up with me, and I'd be happy to connect. You can reach me at hello@progressivebitcoiner.com. And before we get to the show, as always, please check out our promo links for SAS mining and Bitbox as well. So get $50 off each miner with SAS mining, a great time to get into Bitcoin mining. And then with Bitbox, speaking of self-custody, it is the best way to custody your Bitcoin private keys. You're going to get 5% off using the promo code and the link below. So check that out in our show notes. And you can also check out our Substack, progressivebitcoiner.substack.com, to get our free weekly newsletter covering a lot of things we like to talk about on this show. News from the week, talking about the environment, talking about Bitcoin mining, human rights, all those good things that we like to focus on. So be sure to check out that and subscribe, and you'll get episodes in the newsletter delivered right to your inbox each and every week. All right, everyone, thanks so much for joining us as always. And I'll let you get to the episode now, and we'll see you again next week. Hi, Lyudmyla, and thanks for coming to our podcast for the Progressive Bitcoiner. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you so much, Trey, for inviting me. And thank you, everyone who is joining us to listen to this podcast.
Absolutely. And I know you're fresh from Madeira as well, the conference there. So I want to ask, how was that for you? How was being in Madeira? I know a lot of people listening, saw the conference did a great job updating people that unfortunately couldn't be there. But it seemed like it was such a great time.
Absolutely amazing place. And I have to say that a part of what normally we experience, brilliant discussions, meetings during the Bitcoin conference, this time it was specifically, I would say, magic environment because of presence of family members and children, kids, wives, kid corner, family corner, young Bitcoiners, where they see that they're not kind of, strangers, but actually they have a lot of common things and they can interact, exchange experience, build future. So I think it was absolutely amazing experience. And of course, nature is just something incredible. It's unbelievable views.
I was so jealous seeing everyone there. It seemed like such a great conference, but I'm glad you had such a good time out there. Before we jump into the conversation, I was just telling you, I feel like your name and the Open Dialogue Foundation and your work fighting for Bitcoin rights, human rights throughout Europe and Eastern Europe is getting the recognition it really deserves at this point and the support. But for those that don't know about you listening, do you want to give a little background to yourself and the work that you do?
Absolutely, of course. First of all, I think we're quite anyway small organization. Of course, we're working over 15 years in the field of human rights. And I was one of those who initiated this organization. It was always my dream to protect, help those who actually fighting for democracy, for their rights. And I know what does it mean, because being a teenager, I got support, and my family members who at that time persecuted actually got the support. So I know how personally it's so important when you have no hope to get support of human rights defenders. And I try to be, together with my team and Open Dialogue Foundation as organization, a bridge between those who would never have chance to speak to regulators, to legislators, those who shape their reality, and deliver these voice messages and protect their rights. So it's basically all politically persecuted people, no matter are you activist, entrepreneur, philanthropist, journalist, lawyer, judge, or prosecutor. If you are opposed to regime which violates constitution, rule of law, human rights, you can count on our support. And of course, the main tool, what we do, we build coalitions. You can never get any your right protected if you fight alone. And this is the reason why we try always to build coalition of local communities, international communities, and global communities. In this way, you can actually prevent human rights violation of authoritarian regimes, which always operate globally. They violate international law, coordinating and abusing important instruments. And to be specific, for example, our organization was working since 2013 on reform of Interpol. And this obscure, I mean, because many people just think that it's huge institution, the most powerful one. Yes, but in hands of dictators. And it became one of the most powerful instruments against civil society opposition abroad, to silence those who actually try to escape from persecution domestically. We succeed to have provisions to actually exclude yourself from this wanted list, red notice list, if you politically persecuted, and it takes us 4 years to fight for it. And right now, as an organization, we're fighting against abuses of anti-money laundering and counterterrorism regulations. We experience what does it mean to be target of abuse of these instruments, which are developed by financial action task forces. Another organization which doesn't have any clear procedure, how legislative and regulatory process is developed. Civil society have no access to, or even industry representatives very often doesn't have any access to legislative process, regulatory process of this organization. But this organization shaped entire our reality. So what happened? Since 2018, our organization, my family, our volunteers, our lawyers, accounting, donors, and our recipients of the funds, all of us were target of huge weaponization of our banking data. 3 states, Kazakhstan, Poland during Kaczynski time, and Moldova during Plahotniuc, oligarch Plahotniuc time, they directly send requests to Belgium, where I'm a resident, and got access to my and my foundation banking data. Not only, they were able to organize SMAIL campaign in more than 20 languages against me, my family members, and all around. And this affects our financial services. So we would deprive the right to have financial services. Our accounts, banking accounts were terminated. And during this time, we were not only able to survive, we were able to provide support to other communities thanks to Bitcoin. And this is a moment when most of our team, myself, we understand that Bitcoin is not just a speculation instrument for many democracy countries and citizens, how, when they have privileges, they can use this credit card or that credit card. We have no credit cards. We have no banking. Till nowadays, I don't have bank account in Belgium as an organization. But we're using Bitcoin to fundraise, to pay services and goods, and also to support Ukraine for over 8 million euros to provide humanitarian aid since the first hours of Russian full invasion. And of course, we support also family members and civil society activists who deprived right to have financial services due to politically motivated accusations related again on abuse of anti-money laundering counterterrorism regulations. So they called money launderers, extremists, terrorists, national security threats, and so on and so on. So the same experience as I do have from attacks of 3 states, these people, the same financially excluded, and it's millions of people. So that's why we are very much motivated, and we develop program to educate regulators in EU and US. So we protect developers, and Bitcoin as a technology, as a payment instrument, would not be attacked with negative connotations, which right now we see in regulation.
That's a lot that you're doing there, and super important work. And hopefully people can pick up on a common thread from a lot of Bitcoin educators and folks doing this work. But definitely on our podcast, the things that you've said have happened in so many different contexts around the world. I mean, we've had different in Eastern and Western African Bitcoiners on the show talking about very similar things, right? And then you're talking about this in Europe. The same thing could at some point in different contexts happen in the United States. Obviously, the same thing happened with Canadian trucker protests, regardless of what people's views are on different things. This concept of financial sovereignty is super, super important and something that we like to really focus on here. So I think that work is super vital and super important. I want to ask too, just taking a step back. It sounds like a lot of this was very personal for you. Obviously, happened very personally to you and your family. What I think from the beginning was the driving motivator for you to get into this work? And then for you, when did you first discover Bitcoin? And when was that light bulb moment for you seeing this as a tool for financial freedom?
To be honest, first time my meeting with Bitcoin, it was back in 2016. My brother, who is Bitcoin miner, he actually said, "Oh, you should learn about it. One moment you will actually understand how powerful it is." But as many other people, I was neutral for this. I mean, and I said, "Okay, I'm as always very busy. I'm saving life of those and those politically persecuted people." Ukraine was at the crisis at that time, so I said, okay, maybe I will learn it later. I said, okay, there's going to be a day when you understand it fully, but please at least follow this instrument. I said, okay. So I started to learn it, but not using it. I didn't need it at that time, for example, I need it right now, or actually since free authoritarian regime started to weaponize my banking data, and it's basically happened to me the next year in 2017. And it's the reason why it's happened because we invited as organization opposition from Moldova, civil society, judges, lawyers, entrepreneurs, philanthropists, those who became victims of political persecution to European Parliament, European Commissions, and we asked European Union to put conditions on money from the EU to Moldova, including the names of those who are politically persecuted. And European Commission, together with other EU institutions, supported this call. So all money flowing from the EU, and not only EU, US also supported us, International Monetary Fund. They all put condition that Moldova will get money for different kind of projects only if they release political prisoners and they will comply to rule of law and human rights. And this makes furious local oligarchs who can completely control the government, law enforcement, and parliament at that time, Vladimir Plakhatnyuk, and his, of course, entourage. So he announced me a threat to national security, organized a criminal, politically motivated case against me, organization, and all people whom I invited to European Parliament. A few weeks after, basically those conditions were imposed and money were frozen for Moldova on the condition of human rights, and he has to release political prisoners, but he never stopped to prosecute me until he basically lost the power in 2009. In parallel, at the same very moment, with Moldova, Poland was attacking me for the same very reason, because I was a voice for judges and prosecutors, journalists, lawyers, entrepreneurs, those who are arbitrarily detained or those who are politically persecuted, removed from their positions, those who refused to give their business for free for the government under political pressure. And I invited them to different European institutions, and we started to actually expose how Polish government, Law and Justice Party violate human rights. And for this reason, because I'm Ukrainian, Polish government announced me as a threat to national security in Poland with no actually ground. They just classified the case and announced me way more dangerous than any existed terrorist. And this was the reason why I was deported for 3 weeks from EU to Ukraine until President Macron, President of Germany, Parliament of Germany, European Parliament, many other institutions announced me, while I'll be a threat to national security in Poland, national interest in their country. And this is how I got protection in Belgium and residence in Belgium. And I was able to, and I am able to continue my work. And Kazakhstan, the next country who was joining this at 2017, 2018, It was Kazakhstan because we exposed political killings, mass abuse of anti-extremist and terrorist law against opposition, civil society. Whenever you post on Facebook criticizing the government, you announce to be extremist. And this leads you to financial exclusion, basically deprivation right to have any kind of work, social services, nothing. You just like in concentration camp without being in prison. It's from one side. From other side, if you are active human rights defender, if you're active oppositioner, then you jailed for 17 years, tortured, or your children can be politically killed. And we exposed these gross human rights violations, and European Parliament adopted our recommendations at that time. And again, it's provoked that Kazakhstan started to prosecute me. But Kazakhstan has less leverage, so they use as a proxy countries, for example, to get our banking data, Poland and Moldova at that time. Kazakhstan started to organize huge smear campaign, and they are one of the most sophisticated country. For example, if they want to block bank account or fundraising campaign of activists or human rights defenders, it takes them 3 to 5 minutes. Imagine speed, how they able to block your bank account. And this is also the reason why it's so important, why we teach, for example, activists in Kazakhstan to use Bitcoin, especially peer-to-peer transactions, safe privacy instruments like mixers, because otherwise you would not be able to survive. This government is one of the most sophisticated, getting Chinese-style, Turkish-style surveillance mechanism to prosecute and silence dissidents and activists inside the country. So with all of these, imagine all of the three countries were able to get my banking data. They were not able to stop my human rights activity because of all political support I got in European Union. But at the same time, with all of this political support, I was not able to protect my banking data. And you know what is it, banking data? Banking data is your everyday life. Whenever you go to the doctor, what you buy, and where you're actually moving, who is supporting you, who is getting funds from you, and even worse with it when it's human rights organization like Open Dialogue Foundation. So all of our donors and all of our recipients of the funds became a victim and targets of smear campaign, of attack, physical attack, political persecution. Both in Moldova and Kazakhstan, people were arrested once authorities of those countries under Plahotniuc and Nazarbayev's regime got our financial data. Activists who worked with us for many years exposing human rights violation, they were jailed. Relatives of our human rights defenders and lawyer, my colleague Bota Jardimali, her brother was arrested, tortured, and sentenced for 7 years until the moment when we organized a huge campaign and he was released. So it's all really important to understand how right now it's not only about Europe that I was like so much exposed for these violations. It's actually about all of us. And it's US in the same situation too, UK, Canada. Why? Because we all live under conditions and provisions of compliance created by Financial Action Task Forces. So it's global approach of anti-money laundering regulation. And this international convention, they build on travel rule assumption when financial institutions of authoritarian state treated the same as financial institution of democracies. And all knowledge of intelligence, how to identify people, how to process data, easily given to all authoritarian regimes. In authoritarian regimes, in dictatorial regimes, banking system is just one of arm in the hands of dictators against civil society and opposition. So they send this data to request to democracies, get it about everyone they want without any remedies. So one of our goal was, and one of our campaign is actually to establish remedies. So financial institutions, not just a tool in hands of dictators. And this is the reason how and why we started to use Bitcoin, because at that time when we were completely financially excluded, banks terminated one by one our financial services in Belgium. Another banking services or fundraising campaign terminated our services because we were fundraising for Ukraine, because you associate then with the risk zone. And it means that you cannot support your family members, those who actually died without any kind of support, like it was, especially on the beginning of Russian full invasion. And this is, again, the reason why we started to use Bitcoin, because this is the tool allows us to buy and sell, to buy and process transactions as much as soon as possible. So people were able to sell us, for example, bulletproof vests, helmets, medical stuff, like in a minutes, not just like waiting transactions for weeks, like it was for example, those who wanted to buy something from Ukraine and European countries, or even in other jurisdictions like Canada and so on. So, and for us, it's not speculation instrument. For us, it's human rights tool, payment tool, and fundraising tool. And what we also try to educate regulators whenever we meet, for example, and defend political prisoners or those who are politically persecuted, we mentioned that for us, it's very crucial recognition of Bitcoin as a payment and fundraising instrument. And we demand to have neutral language, both in the US and also in EU and Canada and UK, as a democracies, as G7 countries, for one simple reason. Whenever it's established in these jurisdictions as a law, it's going to be a standard for authoritarian regimes or can be abused by authoritarian regimes to prosecute and weaponize these instruments like that you use Bitcoin to those who are politically repressed and financially excluded. And then we as human rights defenders cannot defend these people if democracies and authoritarian regimes act coordinatively and label Bitcoin, for example, with illicit activity tools, bad for environment, bad for energy security, right? And activists who are using it, they're going to be victims of this persecution. Developers are going to be a target of this, weaponization of language of regulation from the side of authoritarian regime. So all of these important aspects, and this is why we believe that it's so important not to ignore negative language against Bitcoin, but we need to combat these false narratives, and we need to protect our basic human rights. The only freedom tool right now we have, it's privacy tools, payment and fundraising, everything built on Bitcoin and peer-to-peer transactions, because we cannot use, for example, exchanges. Even in democratic countries, the same reason like with banking, all data is going to be shared. There is no remedies. Exchanges are regulated in the same way as banking, traditional banking system. And it means that your funds, absolutely transparent. If bad actor want to get your data, want to know everything about you, they just need to send request or to organize smear campaign against you in different languages. That's it. You became enormous cost for compliance for financial institutions, and you're going to be excluded. And this is what we experience and many other people around us.
This episode of The Progressive Bitcoiner is brought to you by Zeus. Zeus is a self-custodial Bitcoin wallet for Android and iOS. The app features a built-in Lightning node that allows you to take full control of how you make payments on-chain and on Lightning. You can easily onboard to the Lightning network and let Zeus's Lightning service provider, Olympus, do all the heavy lifting for you. Or you can get more hands-on and curate your own Lightning channels with whoever you transact with most. Zeus has best-in-class privacy and allows you to have great peace of mind when sending and receiving Lightning payments. Not only does the Zeus team not want to know how you're using your money, but they're building things in a way that they can't know. There's also a first-of-its-kind Lightning address that will allow you to receive payments 24/7 to your mobile wallet self-custodially. This is a great solution for a range of people. For those who just want to have the technical ability to set up their own infrastructure, to nomads and dissidents that need to accept donations on the move. Other Lightning wallets don't give the users this level of control. In fact, many of them operate more like bank accounts that can be revoked and ultimately lead to you losing your money. With Zeus, you're in full control of your private keys and therefore can start to take full control of your financial destiny. Save 5% on LSP fees using code TPB in the access code under LSP settings. To learn more and to learn where to download, head to ZeusLN.com. I think more people need to be reminded of this. Like, if you approach, let's say, from a regulatory landscape, Bitcoin as a fundraising tool for human rights, for payments, all of this, because I think a lot of people, maybe regulators, let's say some that are actually okay with Bitcoin or more in favor of it, want to protect it as like an asset or an ETF or things like this in the US. Well, if you try to protect Bitcoin regulatory wise as payments, as fundraising, the other stuff will be protected as well. Like if you want to have it as a store of value, fine. If you want to have it in your portfolio, fine. All of these things. Because right now it's super, super limited with that if people are just approaching it as an asset. and not these other tools, those won't necessarily be protected or viewed in the same way. And I think that's a very good point, and one that I want to echo and focus on is, if democracies are sending a message about Bitcoin in this way, that it's for, like you said, illicit activity, in these other points, well, these totalitarian regimes are going to use that and weaponize it, and we've already seen that everywhere around the world in terms of amplifying that. So that ripple effect that I was discussing with you right before the podcast, is huge and cannot be dismissed. And I think that's what frustrates me so much when politicians or regulators, kind of passively talk about it in this way. It has huge ripple effects, and sometimes life and death for people around the world. That's really serious. That's very, very serious, and only going to continue to get more serious.
Yeah, I would not just put all responsibility for the back of regulators. We also have to do our homework, and our homework in democracies, we have privileges to defend our rights. We have privileges to vote for people who care about privacy. In democracies, we have procedures which gave us right to be a part of discussion. And if we exclude it from this discussion, we can protest, we can actually raise voice, we can coordinate our campaign and actually expose it. For example, I really applaud for Rights Marathon and many other guys who actually defend proof of work, not just complaining in Twitter, but they do it with the active actions in the court, in meeting regulators, explaining, because regulators at the end of the day is the same like legislators, they are people, and they follow narratives. We live in the world of narratives. And unfortunately, everything around Bitcoin, if we speak about big media, it's false narratives. And who is going to correct this narrative if not us? We have to be proactive. Otherwise, if you don't defend your rights, you lose it. So I think people and communities, especially Bitcoin communities in US, doing quite good job. They're active, and I really applaud this. This is my dream, to have the same active community in European Union. In European Union, for the moment, I don't see that much active representation. There are only us as human rights activists who are afraid to lose Bitcoin as a payment and human rights and crowdfunding tool. And Bitcoiners basically prefer to stay, maybe say, oh, guys, you're doing important work, but actually not do much from their side. And this is, I would say, very much concerning. Maybe someone will feel offended, but as human rights defender with 15 years experience, I know the price all of us paying just to refuse to exercise your privileges of human rights, defending when you live in democracy. We should be active. People are dying in authoritarian regimes to be able to vote, to be able to be elected, to actually defend your rights in a court or somewhere. And in democracy, we feel everything given for granted. No, it's granted for you and for us because our grandfathers, they fight it for it. They pay their huge price. Some of them paid their life to actually, for us, live in a comfortable world. And we should not abandon it. We should not give up. We should not follow these narratives and allow these narratives to basically destroy our democracies. And it's not abstract. It's something what we right now see in many countries, where this country was in peace and prosperity, and suddenly after it's destroyed and it's just basically almost ruins. So this is something what we have to remember. And I think if we have this also present gift from this sacrifice, I would say, from Satoshi Nakamoto, I'm pretty sure he was human rights fighter and financial freedom fighter. He gave us this tool. It shouldn't be abandoned. I know this narrative that Bitcoiners say that Bitcoin doesn't need you. It's true, but I need Bitcoin. And a lot of communities who doesn't have voice, we need Bitcoin. And that is why I'm going to defend both developers, for example, like Rafa Cordon, who developed simple proof mechanism to protect election results in Guatemala. And once the regime was unhappy with the result because they were not able to actually make a fraud, electional fraud, right? They wanted to go after both developers and judges who used this technology to protect election. So we protected both judges who were standing for correct the result of election, and also developers, because they are heart of this technology. And that's why it's so important that democracies, because democratic countries, both US and EU, they supported our call and they were protecting this election result. They were on the side of society who was like crazily tired of all of this corruption regime in Guatemala. And there again, our role, we show, guys, you like this election result. Do you know that this election result is actually secured thanks to technology of simple proof and Rafa Gordon and his team? This Bitcoin blockchain technology, which actually protect this election. And this is how you protect developers. This is how you protect also Bitcoin from false narrative that it's only used for speculation, that it's bad for environment, and it is used only by money launderers. No, it's not true. A lot of people who are excluded, those who doesn't have voice to speak in front of foreign communities, they're using it because they're financially excluded. And this is the only human rights tool we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think whenever I talk with a human rights activist, you can feel your passion and fire. And I think frustration as well, in that we have all of these things that so many folks are taking for granted, and we have to fight every day for this to make sure that we utilize our voices and fight for this. One thing I wanted to ask you, and my hope is that, especially from this platform, I think a lot of our messages are pretty accessible for everyone, but especially those on the left, or those progressives, especially in the US, that hear a lot of the bad narratives about Bitcoin. That's one of the reasons we're here, is because we want to constantly combat and confront that in ways where these people can actually understand. Well, the one thing, it was kind of recent. We talk about Senator Elizabeth Warren a lot on this show. Sometimes get a little tired of that, but it's not just about her. It's about a lot of different politicians in the US and throughout Europe. But there was one video recently, I believe she might have been on CNBC, I can't remember exactly, in terms of the DAMLA law, the digital asset money laundering law that's been around, that's been kicking around in the US for about a year and a half, that really is going against self custody, and going against trying to make a lot of banking regulation for self custody of Bitcoin and mining and all sorts of things that would have really terrible effects. A backdoor ban is what a lot of people are calling it, and I would agree with that. She argued, saying, "Listen, I'm trying to work with the industry. We're trying to work with the industry here. We're not they're not willing to work with us," type thing. What would your response be in terms of if a politician is proposing something like this? And I know the EU and many other places have their own versions of this, and as you said before, these G7 countries coming together, and they're seeing similarities. What would your response be in terms of laws that say, "Hey, we just want everyone to have the same rules that the banking industry has," or these other things when it comes to something like Bitcoin? What is your response to people like that? Because I think a huge part of it is not understanding and education, but also these folks not caring to understand why this is different from banking laws, and should be different. What would your response be there?
Yeah, I think it again depends whom we are talking to. With Senator Warren, we tried to meet. Unfortunately, she doesn't have time for us. We said, please set up for us any possible time. We are human rights defenders excluded financially because of abuse of anti-money laundering country regulation from all over the world. We're happy to meet with you online. We cannot travel too much to US because it's extremely expensive for us. But once, at least 2 times per year, we go into US to educate and update regulators and legislators about situation in our countries. And we discovered that there is no kind of reply from your side. From one side, from other side, we met quite a significant part of people who co-signed her proposal, and also generally people responsible for anti-money laundering country regulation draft, which is right now shaping in Senate and in Congress. Of U.S. Government of U.S. institutions, and we met also with Financial Action Task Force and State Department. So we proposed also our recommendation and submission to FinCEN before basically deadline on 20th of January. As a coalition of human rights activists, again, financially excluded, and we presented the use cases of Bitcoin so they understand how and why we propose concrete recommendations. And defend, first of all, privacy instrument like mixers, why we defend peer-to-peer transactions, and why we try and ask them to change narratives, not labeling technology with a negative language, which right now we see both in regulatory approach of State Department and also FinCEN and also Financial Action Task Forces from the US. And also we see it in legislative proposals from Senate and Congress, right, of US. So for us, it's very important that language is neutral. It's important because US established the same, like European Union, so-called golden financial standard as a G7 country. And then it's going to be repeated and endorsed in many other countries. For example, in Ukraine, where I'm originally from, right? In Moldova, in Georgia, and many other countries. So the neutral language is so important that we as activists who financially excluded afterwards can use this instrument for our normal human rights work. From other side, we of course understand that bad actors can use this instrument too, but this is why we have all law enforcement agencies, and they should not put their functions to financial institutions. It's where you don't have any kind of remedies, where you don't have, any kind of instruments to protect your financial and personal data. If we spend money as a taxpayers to financial institutions and law enforcement agencies to do surveillance against us, so there's obvious conflict of interest. So why we should have additionally all of these, special services if a bank is going just directly, or any kind of financial institution just directly do surveillance against you. It's kind of, for me, very questionable from the point of view of privacy, and also from the point of view how vulnerable our all gathering of financial data or any kind of data against abuse from the side of authoritarian regime, which can hack our database and actually abuse it. So I have a lot of questions to this. And we propose concrete recommendation explaining that we should have a space as a civil society. We cannot use, first of all, financial institutions in authoritarian states. They exclude us. They prosecute us. This is just an arm in the hands of dictatorship. Then we propose them to change approach of travel rule, because this rule allows authoritarian regimes to get the most advanced financial intelligence, knowledge, and use it against civil society. Again, I will bring the country which is one of the biggest, my expertise, Kazakhstan, which use, for example, knowledge from democracies, financial intelligence, and special services, how to block civil society. It takes to them, for example, less than 1 minute to block fundraising campaign in Stripe. If you fundraise for human rights and for political prisoners, this is a speed. And if you are doing it via Facebook, publishing your known activist, because if you're a known activist, you will never get funding, right? Because you need to establish trust. So, but if you are known activist and you fundraise and you place your banking, for example, in social media asking for donations, and we speak about donations $1 to $5, right? These fundraising campaign, it can be blocked and this bank account is terminated within 3 to 5 minutes. This is a speed. So how in the earth Kazakhstan is able to do so? We asked financial action task forces and also State Department, and normally they were surprised at the speed about this kind of reaction. And said this normally has to be used against terrorists, extremists, money launderers. That yes, this is exactly how activists is labeled in those countries. The same in Turkey, the same in Russia, the same in Belarus. But the problem is that no one is doing anything. And the next question, how we can survive, we only use Bitcoin. And we cannot only use self-hosted wallets as it is. We need to have mixers, a protection, because regimes are very much advanced in surveillance in those countries. So that is why we ask for neutral language. And we also concerned that developers, once this negative language is established, going to be the first target. And who are developers? These guys basically without any kind of huge resources, they would not be able to get lawyer. They would not be able to fundraise for their defense. Why? Because again, lawyers would afraid to associate themselves as someone who is standing behind, for example, mixers or self-hosted wallets, and those who, for example, associated in a regulation with a negative, connotations like labels, right? So we need to protect, we need to exclude even possibility to label both those guys who develop for us privacy instruments and those who actually protect our privacy and financial data from this kind of potential persecution. I'm not even speaking about activists who are going to be immediately target for authoritarian regimes just because they're using these technologies. And this is all concerned. Then the next things what we ask and what we expose, first of all, it also has to be changed assumption that Bitcoin is used for circumventing sanctions. We have 7 reports which shows how in reality third countries' financial institutions used to circumvent sanctions, for example, to support Russia, Iran, Venezuela, and so on. This is where actually all real money laundering and circumventing sanctions happen. Unfortunately, we don't see proper reaction. We see secondary sanctions on dummy companies, which can be easily created and recreated, but no one is prosecuting actually and sanction those who beneficiaries of the war. So it's top officials who control financial institutions who are able to come to US and lift sanctions. For example, like Kazakhstani government lift sanctions from 3 Russian banks in Kazakhstan from OFAC. So how in the earth, again, we can speak about reality like fighting against circumventing sanctions if, again, authoritarian regime are able to influence democracies and actually do real circumventing sanctions, but they don't need Bitcoin at all. They use their state institutions, their financial institutions, their banks for doing so, and massively. And we have all data provided. And of course, for us was the last and not the least important to include the case of simple proof and Bitcoin blockchain technology, how to protect election in all of our countries. Elections in a huge actually risk of fraud. And we need to have clear instruments where observers can actually, verify process where basically cards for votes would not be fraud. And this is something what we advise for regulators and legislators to learn more, because in all of our countries and democracies right now, elections period, and we all exposed to abuse from the side of artificial intelligence mechanism and different kind of frauds from different actors. So this Bitcoin technology, which protects elections, should be embraced and actually promoted as much as possible. This is one of our powerful tools which we can use to protect us and our countries from, foreign influence and so on. So this is our recommendations, which we provided to State Department, and we want to do the same right now also in EU, because right now we got information that European Union, especially European Commission, use the same narrative like FinCEN, like Senator Warren, attacking self-hosted wallets, attacking peer-to-peer transactions, and basically making even more exposed financial data of vulnerable groups like activists, immigrants, human defenders, and so on.
Yeah, take us to where things are today. I know a huge portion of your work, and we'll be sure to put all the show notes and want you before we jump off at the end to say how people can support and donate and rally around this cause. I know you have the Geyser Fund as well. So many great things for people to support you with. But bring us to where things are today in European Parliament with proof of work. So discussing proof of work, which is Bitcoin's mining mechanism. That a lot of folks would say is way too energy intensive, and there's an attack on proof of work, which is the backbone of Bitcoin and the security, and then self-hosted. But maybe we can start with proof of work, where things are, where there have been any points of support, and what that, for lack of better terms, battle has looked like in the EU currently.
So right now we're presenting our updated version of submission to European Security and Market Authority. This is a European body which may basically right now develop sustainability indicators. We afraid that these sustainability indicators right now have very discriminative approach, and which will give a European Central Bank to say, please don't invest your money in this company because it's connected to Bitcoin mining. This is, I'm simplifying, but this is what is going to be. It's developed specifically regulatory mechanism based on these sustainability indicators. It's going right now. This report is going to be presented until the end of June. And the main goal, while European Parliament on the new election process, so they have elections in June, we need to, as much as possible, ask questions for those who want to be re-elected or elected to European Parliament. Are they care about privacy instruments? Are they actually aware about positive externalities of Bitcoin mining, proof of work? Because right now we see the situation that European Union wants to regulate globally with a global approach, proof of work, which is not much present in EU. And it means that it's so easy to make it scapegoat for all failures of environmental crisis or energy crisis. We hear quite often in discussion with European Parliament or European Commission and Council and so on, that who is actually responsible for crisis? It's actually proof of work and Putin. Come on, it's not reality. It's just false narrative created by mainstream media, and we have to address it. An election period to European Parliament, it's one of the best period because every of you have your privilege. You're going to vote, or even if you don't want to go to the meetings of those who want to be elected and ask them about privacy instrument. Do they care about privacy? What does it mean, this so-called, digital wallets? How it's going to affect privacy? How they're going to protect your privacy? And proof of work is actually instrument which differs Bitcoin from all other crypto assets because it guarantees your privacy. It's consuming energy, but only those energy which no one wants. So it creates opportunities also for job. It creates opportunity also for stabilization of the grid and so on and so on. Learn and speak with those who want to be elected with a simple language. And we have to do it before June, before actually European Security and Market Authorities will present its report to European Commission. Then for us, the most important period when new parliament established and it starts its works in September, November. This is a month where it's going to be discussions, different kind of movements from inside both new Commission and also European Parliament. Until 2025, European Central Bank should also have different kind of instruments in their hands to discourage investment in Bitcoin mining or related to its company. And our goal is to basically prevent it, not to allow even close to this, regulatory or legislative language. So this is everything around proof of work. Be active. Look who is your MP or who candidate of your MP. Talk to journalists. Educate as much as possible. Those people can make our life difficult right now. Let's do not allow them to do so.
Hi, everyone. Hope you're enjoying the episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Bitbox. Now, Bitbox is a hardware wallet that's open source, incredibly secure and easy to use, and it's what I'm using to safely secure my Bitcoin in cold storage. Now, I know self-custodying Bitcoin can really be intimidating, but Bitbox is designed for ease of use without compromising on security. It's USB-C compatible and allows you to easily back up and restore your private keys with a micro SD card, which is really cool. Now, you can purchase the Bitbox using the promo code TPB at the link found in the show notes for 5% off your purchase. And I really want to thank Bitbox for their support of the podcast, and I'm really excited about this new partnership. All right, I'll let you get back to the episode now. Yeah, 2024 feels like a really, really big year. I mean, we have our presidential election as well in the US at the end of the year. There's a lot of things floating around legislation. Sounds like a lot of work in the EU to be done. And I think too, what I try to talk to friends about of mine, it's not just about Bitcoin, right? If you don't want to hold Bitcoin or Bitcoin isn't your thing, or you're someone in the US and you use Cash App and Venmo and it's just not relevant to your life. I think it can and should be, but let's say they just don't see a use case for it. You know, what the things that you're talking about here, and that's why I love speaking to human rights activists that then come into Bitcoin, because your approach from the beginning, it sounds like it probably hasn't changed. It's just been strengthened by seeing Bitcoin as a tool, because you're talking about privacy, you're talking about human rights, you're talking about financial freedom. We're not sitting here on this podcast talking about, Bitcoin is this tool and or Bitcoin the thing, and this is going to be the price by the end of the year and all of this, right?
I don't
think
care
too
about
many
price.
people still see it as right. Exactly. Me neither. I think too many people see it as a speculative asset, especially people that want to listen to podcasts and finance podcasts and all of these things, right? The themes you're talking about, everyone should care about, regardless of whether they are interested in Bitcoin or not. What you're seeing is, whether it's law enforcement agencies, whether it's politicians, states, democracies, saying you can or can't do this with your money. You can or can't do this if it uses energy, and not being fair to how they analyze Bitcoin miners or people that are willing to do it themselves, like self-hosted miner, all of these things compared to other industries. These are happening in democracies right now underneath us. And that is very, very, very alarming and frustrating. And yes, it's about Bitcoin, but it's also not about Bitcoin. Like, what world do we want to live in where privacy is
Yes.
respected and appreciated? Or do we want to move towards, and I'm not necessarily a dystopian doomsdayer person, but we are slowly slipping into that. And like you said, it takes everyone being active in this argument to make sure this doesn't happen. It's deeply concerning.
Yes, exactly. We live in a world where democracy is one step to be failed, honestly. And this is also because most of people are very comfortable and they think that everything is going to be as it is. Or some of people even applaud for authoritarian regimes, thinking that everything can be fixed by one man, never living actually, under these regimes or living there with, for example, US or EU passport when you have protection of your government. It's completely other feeling. You just don't understand how you can be easily cancelled. How your business can be destroyed. And what we see, for example, right now with Binance and all other companies, no one likes them, but this is reality. If they meet pressure from the authoritarian regime with all their even arrogance, they just cancelled from these countries, right? What we just observed, and they have to leave their business there. And this is normally normal practice. They don't care, are you crypto assets business or what kind of your business. Whenever you are profitable, they will get your profit, and this is what happening normally. So your properties, your rights, constantly violated in authoritarian regime, and this is not something theoretical for me. I'm defending like hundreds of entrepreneurs, philanthropists in many countries, and I saw how really prominent business people were easily destroyed by just one phone call or arbitrary arrest or taking hostages their family members, friends, and so on. So it's not theoretical, it's practical. And if we don't care about democracies, if we don't elect people who care about privacy payment instrument, which is the most essential, from all of my 15 years human rights work, I had one of the hardest lessons. You can have all possible support. You can have, political support and also even financial support. But it's so easy to destroy if your financial data exposed. And this is what happened exactly with me. This is how my business, my foundation, our donors, our recipients of the funds, my family, everything was destroyed in one day because weaponization of my banking data. So I treated it very personally. I share this example. And the drastic situation, what's happened with me, doesn't need to be happen with you, but you can learn and see how in democracies, in the very heart of Europe, you can be exposed and how your data right now, and not only my data, the same exposed. And if you try to criticize someone, you're going to lose all your rights. You're going to be completely isolated. And with upcoming CBDCs, it's going to be even faster. It's going to be even faster. I had at least period of time when four banks, they basically canceled me in 1 year. But at least I have this 1 year, right? I kind of moved from one bank. And I had stress, but I had 1 year. With coming CBDC, all of these digital wallets and so on, it will be just click. That's it. So this is the reason why we should care and we should elect people who care about privacy instrument, actually who defend our online rights. We live in a new era where war happens with new technologies, with our data. Our data is the main weapon for all authoritarian regimes. They don't need to send spies like before. They just need to obtain your data, and they abuse different kind of laws to go after all of those who actually protect human rights, and all those who they want to get your money, your business, anything they want from you. So it's very dangerous.
Yeah, well, for folks listening to this podcast, this has happened before where we're on episodes and it's like, all right, there's a lot. It's an uphill battle. There's a lot that's clearly to be faced because you're right. I think a lot of it is folks are just complacent and they're comfortable. So for some folks, this just glosses over their head. They're not in tune to any of these things. For some regulators, they have evil intention, and for some, it's just they're not educated or informed to understand what's going on. But it still has the same effect, regardless. So talk to me a little bit as well. So we discussed a little bit proof of work and kind of interweaving, self custody and things like this. You mentioned CDBCs. so or CBDCs. Can you talk to folks about where things stand right now in terms of Parliament, in terms of that discussion? I know every other nation is kind of on its own journey with CBDCs. Some feel a little bit closer to that than others. Some are possibly failed projects already. Can you talk a little bit about where the EU is with this on their journey, and what people should think about and do in relation to
Mhm.
this?
For us, the most important dates right now, it's 21, 22nd of April, the days when actually European Parliament going to adopt or actually not adopt trilogue agreement between European Council, European Commission, European Parliament on upcoming anti-money laundering regulation, which basic actually, regulation for establishing also CBDC in the future. But the most important, it's about our privacy. So privacy of financial data, right to use Bitcoin and stable coins as a payment instrument and as a fundraising instrument. And this is something what we achieved last year when we were going there together with Bitcoiners and human rights activists from all over the world, explaining and teaching members of European Parliament, European Commission, and European Council why we were financially excluded and why we use Bitcoin. And we succeeded that time in April to protect those instruments. I mean, both data, financial data from abuse from third countries. For example, also against smear campaign, there was provision, protection of recognition that crypto assets are used as a payment and fundraising instrument and so on. But unfortunately, right now, we've got information that European Council perceived other parties like European Council and European Parliament to withdraw, to basically delete those provisions. And we're very much concerned about it. So again, my call is to be as much as possible active and call members of European Parliament, those who want to be elected and those who are still active, to care and to protect privacy of financial data, to protect the right and recognition that crypto assets can be payment and fundraising instrument. They shouldn't be suspected as a suspicious operations by default when you use crypto assets movement between self-hosted wallets. And then we use, of course, specifically because self-hosted wallets operate only with Bitcoin, right? In this way, you protect Bitcoin self-hosted wallets. And this is something what we need to do. So we protect self-hosted wallets. We have to ask members of the parliament, do they aware that people can be financially excluded and that they use only instrument in this situation, privacy payment tools like mixers, peer-to-peer transactions, self-hosted wallets, and they doing fundraising payment with these instruments. I'm pretty sure that a lot of members of the parliament, because of the electoral campaign, are not aware about this process because they're just busy with meeting people. But this is the golden moment when we actually can influence. The best moment to have impact on politicians when they want to be elected. And we can secure our rights. So guys, whenever you are, if you have questions, reach me out. But in most cases, please learn in simple words, but well argumented. Try to be as much as possible well argumented while you're talking with politicians, and give them all arguments to protect Bitcoin and peer-to-peer transactions, privacy instruments like mixers and self-hosted wallets, because this is a time. April is crucial time. And what else? Don't try to use, please, ChatGPT messages, sending out to European Commission or European Security and Market Authority, or even to us. I mean, I don't need this kind of text because they look as a spam and it's like degraded. Don't go to this direction. It's not helpful at all to anyone. It doesn't work simply. So live communication, as much as possible argumentation. You have all reports. You have our podcasts. Please, this is what you can do and dedicate your time to protect your future, your children, your family members from abuse of banking data, crypto assets data, and protect your privacy instrument. Maybe you don't use right now Bitcoin as a payment instrument, but when CBDC is going to be, and is unfortunately going to be, the Bitcoin is going to be the only your instrument which guarantees you privacy and your human rights.
Yeah, it's going to be, I view it more and more as it's going to be one of the few pieces of property, money, currency that you can even today say you own in a world where, and again, regardless of political ideologies, political party, where you're out on a spectrum or nations, this is kind of the world we're in. And I and you and many others would believe that being able to hold Bitcoin, being able to use privacy tools is a good thing for humanity. There'll be different local contexts and people are going to use it in different ways. But I think that's one thing that we would probably agree, and many, many others, that this is a good path for humanity to go toward, and something we should be pursuing that is really getting hard to imagine right now with these laws and regulations. But one other thing I wanted to make sure we focus on before we end the conversation is, turning the narrative. I think, a lot of the narrative has been turning and shifting a bit on environmental concerns with Bitcoin mining. We've seen a lot of mainstream media articles, more research and data that's actually backed by scientists in the science community and a lot of others talking about Bitcoin mining and its possible positive effects on stranded energy, on capturing methane, on being a tool to build out renewable energies, things like this. I'd say it's still slowly building, right? But compared to 2, 3 years ago, it's almost night and day from my perspective. What is some of your advice and thoughts on how we can continue to shift the narrative on, yes, the environmental concerns of proof of work, but also these privacy enhancing tools and just Bitcoin in general? That, listen, Bitcoin isn't this tool that only criminals are using, and it's just this magic internet money that has no value or purpose. Why are we even doing this? How do we continue shifting this narrative that, like you said, these politicians and regulators are people and these narratives matter, and shifting that narrative matters? So what is your approach to that, and kind of advice on how we can continue to shift the narrative as individuals and as communities and nations?
So just the same way how we are voice and platform for those who are financially excluded or those who are politically persecuted in front of regulators, we try to be a platform and make as much as possible vocal voice of, for example, Bitcoin miners. When we have meetings and educate regulators and legislators why we use Bitcoin, what we want to be changed in regulations, specifically on, for example, anti-money laundering, counterterrorism regulation, or any kind of cybercrime, for example, also regulations, right? This is another very big topic where always Bitcoin is labeled with negative connotation, and we have to deal with and address this issue. We try to invite with us Bitcoin miners. And this situation when if you are a miner, if you are a beneficiary of Bitcoin mining, for example, you represent a community and you got electricity, you have now way more better environment to live in, that means that you need to approach us and help us to collect your testimonials, and we will help to shape it in a language useful for regulators and legislators. This is one approach. Approach by yourself, European and US, Canadian, UK, and other democracies, G7 countries, regulators and legislators. Don't use ChatGPT. Just say your story as much as possible. And approach, especially in before electoral period. Support communities who are doing this work. I know brilliant communities who are doing it in US, and we don't have anything besides of basically our group. And in UK, you have Bitcoin Policy Institute who are doing this work. And that's it, pretty much. Support this community. We need to have capacity to conduct these missions. We need to have capacity to invite activists, to write our submissions, to print them, to go there, to conduct hearings, to conduct discussions about all of these issues. We need to be able to do so. So we need your support. And the same, of course, with self-hosted wallets, self-custody, and privacy instrument. The same. Explain why it's important for you. Support those who use it. Support developers because they're going to be in the front line. And we need to have, as much as possible, develop a world of fundraising and crowdfunding. We need to defend this instrument because in traditional crowdfunding instruments, they will be immediately canceling us once we labeled with any kind of negative connotation in regulation, or if there is a law abused by some government. So we need to have our plan B. We need to protect our Bitcoin, and we need to support communities who are doing this work, even if you don't want, if you don't believe, you don't know. Support those who are doing it. That's it.
Yeah, completely. And these tools that make it harder for anyone to be able to get in the way, right? Because we have to live in a world where we might assume that some things could get more hostile. Some
Yes.
governments could get more hostile. So building freedom tools, like the government was very, very, very hostile to an open internet decades ago, right? The internet is everywhere now. I think a lot of people draw comparisons to Bitcoin. I think in some ways the fight might be a little more complicated when you're battling with currencies and globally dominant currencies. I think it's a bit different, but these privacy tools and these tools and these builders, it's really, really important. So I completely echo that message. Is there any way that people can help directly support? What's the best way? You mentioned, people can get in touch with you. We'll be sure to put everything in the show notes as
Yeah.
well. But what's some of the best ways right now that people can support you and support the work at the Open Dialogue Foundation?
So, of course, we are very much interested in getting testimonials, especially everything related, those who benefit from proof of work, Bitcoin mining, and of course, Bitcoin miners. We also need from global, basically, places. It's not only about EU, US, it's just global approach because EU is developing the same like US standards with a global classification or discouragement investment to Bitcoin mining. So we need global approach with the testimonials. Whenever you benefit from Bitcoin mining, please reach us out, me or my colleague Bota Jardimali. You can reach me through Telegram or Twitter or Nostr, so whatever you're comfortable. Email. So I'm happy to share all of this data. The second, of course, what we need, of course, funds for operating and moving things forward. So whenever you can donate, we are non-profit, non-partisan organization, 503 in US. So, and also non-profit in EU. We're happy to cooperate. And actually, we're always transparent about how we spend money. All our financial reports are available in all languages we operate. So, whenever you feel comfortable or you want to be our volunteers or you are actually privacy payment expert and you can have a look with us, for example, in draft of legislation or develop any kind of amendment to ongoing regulation, we need you. We really need you because we're looking from the perspective as human rights defenders and users, and sometimes we don't understand how this or that technology can be blocked. And with your support, we definitely will be able to fix it. And the same with Bitcoin mining. If you know that this or that regulation is going to affect you and we didn't include it in our submission, reach us out and help us to understand, include it as a submission, joint submission. We're happy to be actually joint platform. We believe in coalitions because it's the most effective when activists and basically Bitcoiners defend as a community their rights. So I think it's the most effective approach. We saw a lot of results and we have these results. For example, we have right now capacity to address and develop regulatory and legislative mechanisms for 57 member states, both in North America, Europe and Asia, with use of Bitcoin and stablecoins for human rights and for humanitarian aid. And the same exposing anti-money laundering counterterrorism regulation. We just need your support to be able to conduct all this. And of course, we can use donations. Just to be also precise, we get donations and we prefer donations via BTC Pay Saver, which is also on our website.
Great.
You just go on our website or the Foundation EU and you will see a Bitcoin and you can select it and basically donate the amount what you want. Or you can donate it via Geyser, our crowdfunding basically campaign. Or you can reach us and we will provide you wallets. Depends what you want, how you want to support us. We are free to do so.
And that's great, right? For the US context, a lot of people do fundraising and they do, GoFundMe. That's one centralized platform.
We cannot.
Like with Bitcoin,
we cannot.
You were all
it's canceled.
Right, exactly. You can't. It will be canceled. But also, there are a million different ways that you can accept Bitcoin donations. Create endless amounts of wallets. Different addresses and things like that. It's absolutely amazing. So yes, everyone listening, please find ways to support. Think about this. If you're in Europe, definitely follow up. Definitely see what you can do in these contexts. I think it's super, super important. But wherever you are, think about this in your local context. Think about your local communities. Think about the ways you talk about Bitcoin and these types of things with privacy and why it's important with family and friends. Get in touch with your lawmakers in ways that aren't ChatGPT motivated, like you were mentioning. I think that's super, super important. Connect this to human stories. Connect this to stories because it's going to take everyone, right? For those that say, okay, Bitcoin doesn't need us. Yes and no. I think the world we want to see, though, needs us. And
exactly.
I think that's really, really important.
Exactly.
So Lyudmyla, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a pleasure meeting you and talking with you, I think your passion comes through. I hope people can see that and feel it. I definitely can. I look forward to keeping in touch. I'm sure I've got a lot of ideas I can bounce off of you, and some thoughts on all of this, and be happy to support you in any way that we can. But thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Ray, and everyone who is listening and was with us. Thank you so much, guys.